My kids threatened to call CPS on me, so I put their dog up for adoption. My two twin sons were 6 years old when their mother passed away in a car accident. It was a devastating affair, and I didn't even look at another woman for the longest time, but now, 10 years later, with my children being teenagers who are old enough to understand and choose to accept a new female figure in the home, I've decided to start dating again. I've been seeing this girl Claire for only 2 months now, but my sons are furious that I would dare date any woman after their mother. As a result, they've lately been going through a rebellious phase, which includes them skipping homework, stopping all their chores, and coming home late at night, way past their curfew. For reference, their chores used to include walking and feeding the dog, but they've even stopped that, putting the responsibility of caring for our little guy fully on me when I work 11 hours a day. Still, like any parent, I've tried my best to speak to them gently about the issue to see how we as a family can work past this. However, my sons have refused to entertain any of my attempts at having a genuine conversation. The last straw came a few nights ago, when I asked them to help me with cooking dinner for my girlfriend and they intentionally sabotaged the meal by dumping vinegar in the sauce. Furious, I told my sons this rebellion would not be tolerated if they kept it up. My kids started walking to the door, and I explicitly told them that they were not allowed to leave this house until we had a proper discussion, when my eldest turned back and said, "Yeah, and what are you going to do about it, Dad? If you try to stop us, we'll just call CPS on you and say you've been abusing us. Is that what you want?" Go to part 2. My kids threatened to call CPS on me, so I put their dog up for adoption. Part 2. It was devastating for all of us when my wife died, leaving me with my twin 6-year-old boys, but I forced myself to hold it together for their sake. 10 years later, with them being teenagers and us all being more mature, I felt ready to start dating again, but my boys did not accept my new girlfriend. They went as far as to call her an emotional support gremlin. As a protest, they stopped doing all their chores, most of which were related to our family dog, ignored my girlfriend's attempts to bond, and repeatedly broke their curfew. It all came to a head in a big argument, where my kids finally responded to my demands for them to not leave the house by saying, "Yeah? What are you going to do? If you try to stop us, we'll just call CPS on you and say you've been abusing us. Is that what you want?" I was floored at the fact that they could even conceive of making such a threat, but I forced myself to calm down. When they finally came home that night, they went straight to their rooms, but I spoke to them through the door. I told them that I understood they were still grieving their mom and that they couldn't accept me trying to move on from my pain by finding comfort in another woman. I told them that I accepted this and would be breaking up with my girlfriend for their sake. At this, my kids opened the door, but I kept talking. I explained that, since I clearly wasn't allowed to have an emotional support gremlin, they wouldn't be allowed to have one either. I then revealed that in their absence, I had put their dog up for adoption. Go to the final part, part 3. My kids threatened to call CPS on me, so I put their dog up for adoption. Part 3 of 3. It hurt like crazy when my sons rejected my new girlfriend, calling her an emotional support gremlin and saying that I was a terrible man for abandoning their mother like this, who has now been dead for 10 years. I understood their pain, but when they told me in a fight that I wasn't allowed to tell them what to do otherwise they would call CPS to report me for abuse, I realized that things had gone too far. So, when they came home that night, I made a decision. I told them I would be breaking up with my girlfriend for their sake. However, since I wasn't allowed to have an emotional support gremlin, they weren't either, and I revealed that I had put their dog up for adoption. At this, my sons sprinted out of their room to look for their beloved pet, but the dog was gone. Immediately, they started screaming at me, telling me that this was actual abuse and that I'd gone too far, but I just yelled back at them, asking why they thought I would let them keep the dog when they boycotted all chores, including stuff like taking our girl out for walks, putting our dog in the crossfire of their stupid protest. I asked them why they were allowed to find support in an animal when they expected me to abandon any hope of love, ever again. I told them, explicitly, that the pain they felt at the idea of losing their dog couldn't begin to compare to the loss I felt when I lost their mother. And finally, I told them that the dog was at my brother's, and that I wanted them to sincerely think about what kind of life they wanted me to lead, because if they were this upset about losing the love and affection of a dog, they should think about how upset I am over the idea of the two boys I love most in the world wanting me to never feel a woman's love again. My sons went quiet and finally said that I'd gone too far, but they've been gentler with me since then. Not breaking curfews, at least. I hope this marks the start of a better future for all three of us, but I can't know for sure. Please wish us luck. And Sophie, honey, I miss you. I daydream about getting hit by a car so I won't need to deal with my children. Please help. My husband John and I have always been in a very traditional, wholesome relationship, and I can feel it suffocating me from the inside out. We were high school sweethearts, went to the same college, and got married the month after our graduation. I always knew I was going to be a stay-at-home mother, and John quickly got me pregnant. At first, my life felt like absolute bliss. James was helpful around the house, was extremely attentive to me during my pregnancy, and we were still very connected physically and emotionally. Since both of our parents are a little conservative, we tried to minimize our knowledge about the pregnancy, and James's wealthy parents hired a stay-at-home coach who handled pretty much all the information about the baby so that I could experience pregnancy in a natural way. This meant that, although I went to doctor's appointments to keep my baby healthy, I only followed the coach's instructions and thus never learned any details like the gender of my child, physical characteristics, or, most importantly, the number of children in my womb. Giving birth was an absolute ordeal. I vomited mid-push and there was so much blood, and when my baby was out, I felt like I could cry with relief. That was when the doctors and my baby coach informed me that I had to push out another baby. And not just one baby, but 2 whole children that I needed to force out of my womb. To say I was furious was an understatement. I was so unprepared for that revelation that, before my babies even left my body, I had already started to feel an unhealthy resentment towards my triplets for the amount of pain they put me through. Somehow, I got my way through the rest of childbirth, but nothing could have prepared me for a life with 3 kids, or the way it would weigh on my heart. Go to part 2. I daydream about getting hit by a car so I won't need to deal with my children. Please help. Part 2 of 2. I never thought that trying to be as traditional as possible with the birth of my babies would backfire, given that it had worked for thousands of years, but as soon as I realized I was giving birth to not 1 but 3 children, mid-delivery, I had already started to resent my kids. Getting through the rest of my delivery was a miserable ordeal, and I won't regale you with the details. If anything, I was just lucky in that my children were all somehow healthy, but nothing could have prepared me for the misfortune of raising triplets. It's been 2 years and, honestly, my biggest daydream now is being hit by a car. I cannot stand living in this house anymore. I love my husband John to bits and pieces, but a part of me secretly loathes him because he is the reason that I have 3 children running around instead of 1. It was his parents who insisted on trying to stay traditional and natural. I feel like, if I had known that I would be giving birth to triplets, I could have at least prepared myself mentally and emotionally. But the past 2 years have been nothing but a constant slough of stress, anxiety, and a feeling of an absolute loss of control. All I want is to be able to make a single decision for myself for just 5 minutes. But I can't go to the bathroom alone because the kids will cry. I can't eat nice food because they'll be screaming the whole time. I can't dress in outfits I used to because my body is so different. It's reached the point where I don't let myself drive my car anymore because the idea of just not hitting the brakes is too appealing, and I don't know if I'd be able to control myself when ending things alone feels like an act of power that I crave. Please help me. What should I do? I can't give away my kids, but I cannot live with them any longer. I am rusting like metal from the inside out, and the only thing that scares me more than what I'm experiencing right now is all the misery I have left to experience in the future.
My daughter's nanny bought my 8-year-old daughter a crop top, so I ruined her life. My husband and I both work full-time, so we hired a nanny named Daphne to care for our 8-year-old daughter in the hours after school. At first, everything seemed to be going perfectly fine. My daughter really enjoyed spending time with Daphne, and they bonded easily because Daphne is going to be studying art in college and my daughter is obsessed with painting. Because of this, the relationship between my daughter and Daphne has always been closer to sisters than a stereotypical nanny-child relationship. We get Daphne presents during Christmas, keep a small inventory of her favorite chocolate, and we've done everything we can to make her feel welcome in our home. However, she completely took advantage of my daughter's blind adoration for her. My husband and I noticed that Daphne had slightly bad habits when it came to clothing. She regularly wears clothing that could count as underwear, usually has her entire midsection exposed, and wears clothing that is meant for Halloween college costumes. We asked her if she could cover up around our daughter, but although Daphne would sometimes bring a hoodie to cover up, she didn't really change her views. Still, her babysitting is the cheapest one around town, so we let her be. Yesterday, though, something bizarre happened. I was organizing my daughter's closet when I saw a crop top and miniskirt that I definitely did not buy my 8-year-old girl. I confronted my little girl gently, asking her if a friend had left this at her house, and she awkwardly lied until I reached my limit and directly asked her if Daphne had bought this for her. When my daughter shyly nodded her head, the mama bear in me roared to life to take revenge. Go to part 2. My daughter's nanny bought my 8-year-old daughter a crop top, so I ruined her life. Part 2 of 2. I tried to be respectful and not say anything to Daphne despite her scandalous outfits, but I realized that things had gone way too far after discovering a miniskirt and crop top in the drawer of my 8-year-old daughter. My daughter tried to lie at first, saying that she had borrowed the clothes from a friend, but I firmly asked her if Daphne had bought this, and my daughter nodded her head. Apparently, this clothing set was Daphne's Christmas gift to her, a Christmas gift that was given when my little girl was 7 years old. I'm all for feminism and bodily autonomy, but there's nothing powerful about dressing a 7-year-old up so that her entire midsection and legs are exposed. I told my daughter that I would be holding on to her clothes, and she begged me not to yell at Daphne, but that just meant that she knew Daphne had done a bad thing by buying these clothes for her. So, calmly, I called Daphne and told her that, due to the inappropriate nature of the gift she had given my daughter, she was fired. Then, I called Daphne's parents. For what it's worth, I wasn't actively trying to ruin Daphne's life when I did this, I was simply trying to confront another adult so that Daphne experienced actual consequences for her actions. However, it turns out that Daphne's parents are extremely conservative, and they never even knew about the ridiculous outfits Daphne wears as she usually leaves the house in a jacket. Now, I found out that Daphne's parents have withdrawn financial support and that she is having to pay for college on her own, which she can't afford. She's called me, furious, telling me that I ruined her life over clothing, and while I feel a little bad, I can't say that I'm sorry whenever I think about all the danger my daughter could have been in if she wore that outfit. What do you think? A minimum wage worker slapped my child, so I destroyed her credit. My friends are telling me that I went way too far with this, but I'm still furious, and frankly, I think I should have, and could have, gone much further. Basically, my daughter and I started shopping for her summer prom dress recently. Because of some health issues, she had to undergo surgery on her knee and was unable to attend or dance at her actual high school prom despite being extremely popular and even predicted to win prom queen. So, to make it up to our little girl, my husband and I have decided to throw her and her friends a new prom party. We sent out invitations to her entire senior class, and over half responded in the affirmative, with most of the people who said no simply saying that because they were on vacation. A party like this may sound a little weird, but my husband and I live in an extremely affluent neighborhood, and parties on this scale are quite commonplace. So, my husband and I naturally pulled out all the stops. We rented a gorgeous venue for the night, one that's even nicer than what the school could afford, have arranged for catering, decorations, entertainment, music, and a lot of extra amenities that the original prom wouldn't have, and we made a point to ensure that we went to every length possible to ensure that this experience would be as magical for our daughter as possible. Obviously, the crowning purchase would be my daughter's prom dress. So, we went to a bridal shop and asked to try on their non-white dresses. My daughter was a little excited and accidentally ripped a few of their sample pieces in her haste to try on as many as possible, when an employee started getting fed up with her. I did not expect what she was going to do next. Go to part 2.
My brother cheated on his wife, with his wife's mom, part 2 of 2. My brother Jacob did not, in any world, deserve his wife Shelley. Their relationship was so ridiculous that most of the young people in my family speculated that Jacob was paying Shelley to pose as his girlfriend, since she was a stunning, respectable, charismatic woman and my brother Jacob was a guy without a degree who played video games all day while literally living in his mom's basement. Well, he lived in her basement until he moved in with Shelley. Their marriage was a shock to everyone, and that was probably the first time we realized that their relationship was real. Obviously, we all ran background checks on Shelley to see what kind of skeletons she could have in her closet, but everything came back clean, and Shelley only seemed more impressive after we saw all her career accomplishments. So, it was shocking when Jacob married Shelley. It was more shocking when, 2 years later, everyone finds out through a freaking Facebook post that Jacob cheated on Shelley with Shelley's mom. And I guess this is even more confusing, because Shelley's mom isn't even stereotypically attractive. She genuinely just looks like a kind old lady. My jaw was on the floor as I read the Facebook post from Shelley's dad, which outed both Jacob and his mother-in-law for their affair, and my entire family is a wreck. The older generation, my parents and their siblings, are devastated and embarrassed over Jacob's actions. On the other hand, us kids are still screaming in our group chat over, firstly, what could have compelled Jacob to cheat on a 10 like Shelley and, secondly, why he would choose Shelley's mother, of all people. The craziest part is that my wife talked to Shelley, and I don't think she's even considering divorcing Jacob over this, as she's already started to talk about couples therapy and rebuilding. I'm at a loss for words. Why is Shelley doing this to herself? Why does Jacob have Riz? Are they really human? What is the world coming to? I made my racist coworker cry. Now, she's trying to sabotage my promotion. I have a coworker named Anna who considers herself to be very liberal and very woke, but she's really super conservative and defaults to racial stereotypes often. She's a stereotypical pretty, rich, white girl who has never had to struggle in her life, so I think she tries to associate with minorities to feel better about herself. The issue is how dramatically she fails at this. Last week, a few black students came in to look at our electronics. Immediately, Anna walked up to them and started helping them through the store, explaining what everything was. They told her they were there to look at drawing tablets, and she was extremely patronizing as she asked them if they were maybe interested in an iPad instead because it had more uses. The students were adamant about wanting a drawing tablet, and Anna continued to press them, asking if they understood that an iPad was much more cost-effective, could give them more bang for their buck, and was overall a wiser use of limited money. At the phrase limited money, I quickly intervened and managed to save those poor students from Anna's blatant racism. However, instead of ignoring her afterwards like I usually do, I immediately started yelling at Anna and asking her what the heck she was thinking. Those were students who knew what they wanted, clearly understood enough about art to have specific needs that an iPad couldn't meet because it's not inherently a tool of graphic design, and she assumed that they were too poor to spend money on a fancy product simply because of their skin tone. I wasn't particularly surprised when Anna started bawling at my criticism. What did surprise me, though, was what she did next. Go to part 2. I made my racist coworker cry. Now, she's trying to sabotage my promotion, part 2 of 2. After Anna practically humiliated the 2 black students who walked into our electronics store, looking for art tablets, by trying to persuade them to buy a more cost-effective iPad that completely ignored their actual needs, I yanked her away from the poor kids. I asked her, with none of my disdain for her hidden, why on earth she thought it would be appropriate to try to convince students to buy something more cost-effective with supposedly limited money when they had indicated no financial limitations and clearly wanted a different product. Not only was Anna costing all of us a cut of the commission that would have come out of a larger sale, she fully assumed that these kids were scrapped for cash just because they were black. Unsurprisingly, Anna started crying after I yelled at her. But then, during my next shift, a manager called me back. Apparently, Anna had filed a formal complaint against me, citing me for treating her with disrespect, being patronizing towards her simply because she was a woman, and not respecting her political values. Now, my manager knows what a ditz Anna is. I was mainly called back to explain my side of the story to give context rather than for an actual talking to. Still, when I exited the manager's office, Anna looked at me with an incredibly smug grin. I asked her what was making her so happy and if she was excited to plan the party for my promotion. Her face immediately contorted into confusion, and I lied to her, saying that the manager called me out back so we could discuss a horizontal transfer for me. Anna, being too much of an idiot to understand that a horizontal transfer is not, in fact, a promotion, was simply floored. When I move from the electronics department to food, she's going to go insane while I have the pleasure of never working with such a clown again. How I actually banged my roommate's mom. My college roommate is an extremely obnoxious guy. Really annoying, really loud, but he's stereotypically attractive, so he always gets away with it. My biggest gripe is how he constantly makes jokes about my mom because she used to be a model and he somehow found out. It makes me extremely uncomfortable, mainly since I couldn't tell whether my roommate was joking about wanting to get in bed with her or not, but I tried my best to ignore it. However, everything came to a head at a Thanksgiving dinner. My friends and I decided that, since we all had small families, we would throw a group Thanksgiving for them and do the cooking for our parents while also giving them an opportunity to widen their social groups. There, I realized that my roommate was actually serious about all the jokes he had been making about my mom. He was acting like she was a sorority girl our age, with the way he was flirting and teasing her. Humiliated and frustrated, I started doing the same thing to his mother out of sheer pettiness, only for his mom to actually return my energy. I was stunned, to say the least, and while his mother obviously wasn't the type of person I would actually go for, she seemed really sweet and flattered by my attention. I didn't want to back off and break her heart, and I also really wanted to teach my roommate a lesson, so, well, I let things happen. Now, I have a series of pictures ready for use whenever my roommate makes his next joke about getting together with my mother. The only issue is, my roommate's mother was doubtlessly the best lay of my life, and I'm starting to think that maybe it's worth pursuing something more there. Will I be the jerk if I do this? Technically, my roommate started it, so he really brought this upon himself.